So let's talk about money in the one way nobody ever seems to talk about it. The honest way. Not the Fantasyland version where you wake up tomorrow with a passive income empire because you downloaded a productivity app. We're skipping all of that. Instead, I want to walk you through how a regular person, someone starting with absolutely nothing, actually gets to their first $100,000. Because that first 100K is different. It's emotional. It feels impossible until the very moment it isn't. And more importantly, it's the only stage of wealth building that almost never gets explained in a way that matches reality. Everyone either talks to you as if you're already rich, or they give you advice that works beautifully for people who already had a head start in life. But what about the person starting at zero, or even below zero? What about the person who's tired of motivational quotes and wants an actual game plan, one that doesn't require superpowers, insider connections, or the kind of risk tolerance usually found in people who don't read contracts? That's what this video is. Not a pep talk, not a shortcut, a roadmap. Because believe it or not, going from $0 to $100,000 follows a surprisingly predictable pattern. Not because life is simple, but because humans are. We make the same mistakes over and over again. We avoid the same uncomfortable truths. And we underestimate how much progress comes from boring consistency rather than dramatic breakthroughs. The good news is, once you understand that pattern, you can stop wasting years trying to reinvent everything and actually start getting somewhere. But before we get into strategies, there's a mental shift you have to make. Not one of those vague money mindset things where you sit with your journal and manifest wealth until your pen runs out of ink. I'm talking about a shift in expectations. Because the single biggest reason people never hit their first $100,000 is that they start the journey with the wrong timeline in mind. Everyone wants money fast. That's completely normal. But the irony is that wanting it fast is exactly what slows you down. When you expect to get rich quickly, you bounce from idea to idea, job to job, side hustle to side hustle. Because anything that doesn't show results immediately gets labeled as not working. And so the process resets. Again, and again, and again. People spend years chasing the fastest path instead of simply taking the one that actually works. And here's the truth nobody wants to hear. The path to $100,000 is not fast, but it is shockingly reliable, as long as you stop trying to skip chapters. So let's start at the real beginning. Not where most people start, not with budgets, not with investing apps, and definitely not with finding your passion. No, we begin with something much weirder, something that sounds like it has absolutely nothing to do with money. Emotional bandwidth. Because when you're starting from zero, money isn't your only problem. You also have chaos. And chaos is expensive. It drains time, attention, and energy. And those three things are the real currency of your early financial life. People underestimate this massively. They think their bank balance is the issue, when really it's the fact that they're juggling unpredictable bills, unstable schedules, too many obligations, or an absolutely heroic level of procrastination. When your life is chaotic, money leaks out in 1,000 tiny ways. Late fees, rushed decisions, impulse purchases, forgotten commitments, burnt-out nights ordering food because you're too mentally fried to cook. You can save someone $500 a month on paper, and they'll still be broke in real life. Not because the math is wrong, but because the human running the math is overwhelmed. So before money starts growing, life has to stop leaking. That means eliminating the stuff that makes everything harder. Debts that feel like they're breathing down your neck. Subscriptions you forgot existed, the I'll deal with it later pile that slowly becomes a financial sinkhole. You don't need perfection. You just need a little stability, because stability compounds. That's the first pattern. The second pattern is this. The journey from $0 to $100,000 is not actually about investing. It's not primarily about saving either. In the beginning, the most important variable, by a massive margin, is income, consistent income, higher income, and eventually, diversified income. People hate hearing that. It's much easier to obsess over budgeting apps or coupon clipping because those things feel productive. They give you a sense of control. But the math is not on your side. You cannot coupon your way from $0 to six figures in net worth. You cannot optimize your grocery bill into financial stability. You cannot turn avocado toast discipline into generational wealth. Those things matter later, but they are the supporting cast, not the lead actor. In the early game, income is the whole movie. But here's where it gets interesting. Increasing your income doesn't mean starting a business tomorrow. It doesn't mean becoming a freelance legend overnight. It doesn't even mean switching careers right away. What it means is that every decision you make, every job you take, every skill you learn, every hour you spend, is measured not just by how it makes you feel today, but by how it increases the value of your time tomorrow. The world pays you based on the problems you can solve. Expensive problems create expensive paychecks. And you don't need a prestigious degree or a genius-level IQ to solve valuable problems. You just need to learn skills that other people don't want to learn, don't have time to learn, or don't have the patience to learn. If you want a brutally honest rule of thumb, here it is. Most people stay broke because they spend 10 years trying to avoid discomfort instead of spending 1 year learning a skill that would have changed their entire financial trajectory. And there's a reason for that. Learning valuable skills is boring at first, frustrating, intimidating. Unlike binge-watching tutorials or researching opportunities, actually practicing the skill feels like work, which is exactly why it's so profitable. You get paid in proportion to the amount of discomfort the average person refuses to experience. Once you understand that, the path to $100,000 becomes much clearer. The first $10K comes from stabilizing your life. The next $20K comes from raising your income. The next $20K comes from making better decisions. And the remaining $50K? That comes from doing all of the above consistently for long enough that the compounding effect finally kicks in. But let's make this practical, because too many money videos get stuck in the philosophical phase and never actually answer the question. What do you physically do, step by step, when you're starting from zero? You start with something incredibly unsexy, an audit, not of your finances, of your habits, because your habits predict your money long before your paycheck does. The simplest version looks like this. Take a week and observe your behaviors like you're studying a stranger. Every time you spend money, every time you avoid a task, every time you procrastinate, every time you stay up later than you meant to, every time you say, "I'll deal with it tomorrow." Write it down, not to judge yourself, to understand yourself. There is always a pattern hiding in the chaos, and that pattern gives you the first handful of wins, not by changing your life, but by removing the things silently sabotaging it. Then the real game begins. You build what I call a financial baseline. This is the minimum structure needed for money to start sticking instead of evaporating. Think of it like building the container before you try to pour water into it. If the container is cracked, nothing else works. The baseline is simple: a stable income source, even if it's not your dream job. A predictable monthly budget, even if it's not perfect. A small emergency buffer, even if it's tiny. A system for tracking money, even if it's basic. People underestimate how powerful the word "even if" is here. The perfect plan is the enemy of the possible one. Early success is not about scale, it's about repeatability. If you can repeat a system for 90 days, you can usually repeat it for 900. If you can't stick to it for 9 days, it doesn't matter how brilliant the plan was. Now, here's where the strategy becomes counterintuitive. Most financial advice tells you to start aggressively saving and investing the moment you have any spare cash. And yes, investing early is valuable. But you know what's more valuable when you're starting at zero? Reducing volatility. When you don't have money, every unexpected expense feels catastrophic. The car breaks down and your progress resets. An unexpected bill shows up and your savings evaporate. You miss one shift at work and the dominoes fall. The first $2,000 you save matters more than the next $20,000. Not because it's impressive, but because it prevents disasters. It gives you breathing room. It turns financial life from a constant emergency into something closer to normal. Once that breathing room exists, everything else becomes easier, including making more money. This is where skill building enters the picture. Not random skill building, targeted skill building, practical skill building. The kind of skills that companies will happily pay for because hiring people who can actually do things, real things, useful things, is way harder than most people think. The most important skill in the early game isn't the one that makes the most money. It's the one that increases your earning potential the fastest. That might be learning Excel or customer service or sales or project management or basic coding or graphic design or copywriting or data analysis or learning to fix things with your hands. It doesn't have to be glamorous, it just has to be valuable. The beautiful part? A skill you learn now pays you every year for the rest of your life. A raise of $5,000 a year may not feel like much, but multiply that by 20 years, and it's $100,000. You literally bought a six-figure return with a few hours of discomfort. Now we're ready for one of the biggest mindset shifts of the entire journey, the one that makes or breaks people. Because once you start making more money, something strange happens. Your problems get more expensive. Your temptations get louder. Your standards creep upward. And before you know it, you're trapped in the golden cage known as lifestyle inflation. Lifestyle inflation is the villain of the $0 to $100K journey. And not because spending is bad. Spending is great when it's intentional. But the moment you start earning more, your brain convinces you that "I deserve it" is a financial strategy. But "I deserve it" is how you stay broke with nicer things. And that is the most painful version of being broke. So the plan is simple. For as long as possible, not forever, just for this phase, cap your lifestyle. Freeze it. Keep it boring. Don't upgrade things because your income went up. Upgrade things because your life actually needs upgrading. If you maintain your lifestyle while increasing your income, you unlock the most powerful force in personal finance, the gap. The gap between what you earn and what you spend. The gap is where wealth happens. And in the early days, the size of that gap matters more than anything you're doing with the money inside it. This is the stage where people finally start seeing traction, and this is also where they sabotage themselves. They think traction means they're good now. They relax. They skip the boring steps. They stop tracking things. They get comfortable, and comfort is the enemy of momentum. The difference between the people who hit their first $100,000 and the people who get stuck at $20,000 is almost always this. One group stays consistent long enough for compounding to start working. The other group stops right before it does. Because compounding is rude. It takes forever to get started, and then suddenly it moves faster than you expect. Anyone who has ever tried investing or saving knows this feeling. The first few thousand take forever. Then the next few thousand feel easier. Then you blink and you're at your highest balance ever. Then you blink again and your money is growing faster than you can contribute. That moment is magical. It feels like cheating. But to get there, you have to survive the slog. The long, slow, boring part where nothing feels like it's working. At this stage, with income up, lifestyle steady, and savings growing, you're finally ready for the part everyone loves to talk about. Investing. But here's the twist. When you're starting from zero, investing is not about becoming a market genius or day trading your way to freedom. It's about volume and consistency, not brilliance. The people who win long-term are not the smartest. They're the ones who made the fewest catastrophic decisions and stuck with the simplest plan. Investing early is not about getting rich from your investments. It's about building the habit of investing so that once you do have money, you already know how to use it. The first few $1,000s you invest don't change your life financially. They change it psychologically. They turn money from something you consume into something you create. And that flips a switch. Because now you're not just working for money. Your money is working for you. Slowly at first, lazily even. But it builds the identity you need for the next stage. And that identity is what gets you to $100,000.